and welcome to another edition of Two Steps Ahead podcast. You know, in life, there's the next right step. Do you take it? If you don't, you step in dog poop? Possibly. Well, we've stepped in both. And so we are Two Steps Ahead podcast, highlighting the stuff we've stepped in so you don't have to. Maybe learn a thing or two. Like in 2020, what a doozy. Doozy of a year in 2020.
Lots of things to learn.
Yes, lots of things to step in. And we've all done it.
Yes.
But as we approach new things, you know, new years, new hopes, new dreams, new avenues in life, it's always kind of this time of year that we sit back and reflect on things that happened and look forward to things that are going to happen. And so on New Year's Eve, when we're counting down 3, 2, 1, watching the ball drop in Times Square, we never thought that 2020 would be the way it was.
Never.
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 And so we take a look back at 2020 and everything that went on. How was it? Like literally when you think about, like for you, I mean, how was it?
It's hard to even encompass it because it just feels like a whirlwind. It feels like very overwhelming. It's kind of like, you know, how sometimes you see in the movies or in TV or something will happen and they're like, okay, what just happened? Like that's what, like, I feel like saying that phrase, even though it sounds really trite and not very original, that's what I like. Okay, what just happened? Like, what is that? Because there were so many things that came out during the year. It's hard to keep up, and we're still kind of, you know, going through it. Right. But that would be my over encompassing, like, just kind of overwhelmed whirlwind. What just happened?
So 2020 hashtag what just happened.
Yeah. I think I'm going to adopt that.
That's the new thing. Hey, so I was thinking back over the year for the show. And I know in general, you know, we started in the fall of 2019.
Right.
Okay. And I know a lot of people, especially early on during the lockdown, a lot of people did one of two things. They either went to TikTok and occupied their time. Actually, I guess one of three things. They watched everything on Netflix. Everything.
Starting with the Tiger King.
Yes, with the Tiger King.
Gosh, that seems like a decade ago, the Tiger King.
Yes, I still can't unsee some of the things that I saw in that. And I didn't watch that much of it. Just enough so we can do the show about it. I watched just enough so we could do the show about it.
Yeah.
And then people started podcasts. A lot of people in the world started podcasts, a lot of podcasts. So we started ours back in the early fall of 2019. Okay. So we had already been doing this for a while when the whole thing shut down. The world got sick. But I'm amazed at everything we were able to accomplish in 2020 in spite of the things that went down. You know, we were able to continually to do a show.
We have not missed 1 week.
We've been able to maintain healthy lifestyle.
Good. Yep.
As far as the way we do things and conduct business and stuff like that. We were able to get out and about. You know, we think back to the beach, your favorite spot. We hit the beach a couple times. In fact, 3 times, really.
We did. Santa Monica was freezing, but Long Beach was definitely a highlight.
Yeah, we did Long Beach twice, actually sitting on the beach. Santa Monica, we were at the pier not too long ago, and we were actually sitting on the beach, enjoying the outdoors. I think back to Kyoto Gardens at the Doubletree downtown.
Hot.
On that super hot day.
It was so hot.
But the peace and tranquility that came from that. Well, we're sitting out there melting.
Yeah.
And then we went into that Starbucks, and the lady had a mask on. Then there's like 15 layers of plexiglass, and I'm supposed to wear a mask.
It's amazing that you even got what you ordered because neither one of you could hear each other.
I didn't know what she said. So just give me some iced tea, something cold. And so, you know, we did that. And then, you know, we were at the Newhall Ranch.
Yes.
You know,
Newhall Ranch Refinery,
which is kind of amazing that we pulled that off because we were scheduled to do the show from there and it was open. And then we show up that morning and then all of a sudden the edict went down that everything's closed.
Right.
And
you know, sadly they are still closed.
Are they
the
really?
Newhall Refinery. Yeah. Because they don't have, I don't know if you remember the street that they just don't have any sidewalk right in that particular place. So the one in the corner is open because they have the whole corner that they can utilize for outside seating. But Newhall Refinery itself just didn't have any, alternative, sadly. So they're still closed.
Here's one thing that's kind of interesting, because I remember we were there that day, and we were trying to think about, okay, if we can't get in, what can we do? We went and talked to that place you mentioned on the corner. There was a big collage thing outside, and we're thinking, well, maybe we could sit here and do this, and we're trying to figure out what we can do. Now, it'd be like no problem just to pop up shop anywhere and sit down and do it, because we've done it so much.
We've just
popped up shop anywhere.
We're very mobile now.
Yes.
And I acquired my GoPro.
Ooh.
So I'm thinking now we can start really being mobile. I'm thinking we can ride roller coasters.
Yes.
We can get on the Ferris wheels. I really want to go to Universal Studios, and they have that fly machine.
Oh yes,
the
like your parachute
simulator,
yeah.
The simulator fly machine where you get in the tube. It's like a wind tunnel, and you fly. Yeah, I think we should totally do that.
Yeah, so a lot of good things coming in the new year.
Yes,
but you think about that, and you think about just being able to pull off some of that stuff, and being able to go to these places, and have some fun. I mean, we did El Torito Restaurant in Pasadena.
We did,
and that was a lot of fun.
That was fun.
And so when we think from the show perspective, because really that's pretty much for me, the entire year was based around the show. Things happen, you lose your job and then you're out of work, but you think of the positive things. And so I just kind of had extra time. So I said, let's do, I'm going to put it into the show. We've expanded, we've been on, we're on, several TV stations up and down the coast from San Francisco to San Clemente.
So, so we're in 6 cities. We're Santa Clarita.
Yeah, we're in Santa Clarita.
San Jose. Or at the top. San Francisco.
So San Francisco, and then we're in Santa Clarita, Pasadena, Long Beach, San Clemente, and there's a couple that are in the works.
Okay.
That have been delayed. Okay. Because of just whatever, the world that we live in.
Yeah, okay.
So 5 markets, and then a couple stations in those markets. So I think we're on like 8 stations. And then there would have been some other things too. But again, the world that we live in right now is kind of slow paced.
Right.
But I think back on it, and it's like, yeah, it was a tough year. I think for me personally, I traveled more than I did any other time. I mean, I had to go to San Francisco a couple times, to conduct business, but that was fun. Got to see some things. I was there on the Orange Day, the day that the world turned like a pumpkin. That was fascinating. I went to Las Vegas a couple times, and that was eerie because nobody was there. I mean, it was a ghost town. I remember taking a picture over the strip on one of the bridges between the MGM and New York, and not a single car was coming.
Oh, wow.
Not one car.
Wow.
I mean, for the distance, not one car. Wow. It was like, wow. But again, the way they handled things and conducted their business, there was no problems. And then, I went back to Nebraska to see some family, and we had a good time there. And so, and that was the thing, I was sitting out the other day, because you can go still, as of this broadcast, you can go to Pasadena and you can still eat outdoors. And down Colorado, which usually is the route for the Rose Parade. But since there's no Rose Parade this year for the 2021 New Year, what they did during the December, the holidays, was they would put seating on the street. And so they would basically take a lane. And so we could all sit outside, plenty of space to sit.
And that hasn't stopped?
As of now, no, we can still do it.
So Pasadena is not part of LA County?
No, they have their own health department.
Because where I live, it's taken away.
Yeah,
no more outside seating.
Yeah, no.
It's just now it's strictly takeout.
As of now, this conversation, you can still sit outside, and you can still dine because they have their own health department and their own hospital, so they're monitoring their own thing, their own city. And so as of now, you can't. But here's the thing. So I was talking to somebody. So some guy came up and he's like, "Why are you guys out here sitting? And why are you out here eating?" And it's like, because we can. There are things that you can do that we were able to do, and even thinking back over the year, things that we can do to protect ourselves and still conduct show business or still do shows, things like that. And that's what it was. It was just kind of common sense. I would go to the beach once a week usually, and hang out at the beach, and nobody was there. But then during like the 4th of July, when everybody was there, I didn't go.
Right.
During, I think Labor Day or whatever it was, everybody's there. well, I didn't go, or I went some other place that was kind of off the beaten path because I didn't put myself in those, situations. And so anyway, so I just kind of think about, maneuvering through 2020, and it took some creativity and it took some ingenuity to still get a lot of things done and not just sit there for me and binge watch, entire Netflix.
Right.
Because that would drive me crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have come a long way this year. I mean, we have not missed a beat, honestly. We have stayed completely on schedule. We have not missed a week. And we have grown in a lot of ways as far as like we're taking it on tour. We're filming outside. We're filming in precarious situations. We've almost been, clobbered by kites and parasurfers. And we were, like you said, in El Torito restaurant where it was just so noisy and chaotic a little bit, with the crowd, people eating behind us. And so we put ourselves in a lot of new situations like, okay, we're not sure how this is going to go, but we're just going to do it and find out. So that way we can, learn for the future. So that has been a real, joy is figuring out because we don't have a specific space to film in. So we're kind of jumping around. So that to figure out the lighting and the sound and the protection and the, sometimes the elements don't really, it's either like a sauna, like 116, or it's freezing on the beach. And
we were at
like the Arctic.
We went to Hollywood Sign. We did the show from the Hollywood Sign.
Oh, that's right.
And it was like 1,000 degrees. We might as well have been doing the show on the surface of the sun. And so then the next set of shows were down at Santa Monica Pier. And we might as well have been, hanging out with penguins in the Antarctic.
It was so cold.
And
so I'm sorry, a really funny thing when we came home that night. So my family's like, so they're sitting in the family room and I came in and I'm standing there and they're asking me questions like, so how'd the show go? And what did you guys talk about? And as we're doing this, I'm peeling off layers, right? And so I'm taking off clothes and finally they're looking at me. They're like, what are you doing? Because there were 4 sweaters on the end of the couch or across the couch. And there were, 3 shirts. Then I was down to my t-shirt. So 4 sweaters and 3 shirts were laying on, and they're just watching me like, it was like a commercial, like a funny, or like a Seinfeld episode. I'm just taking off layer after layer.
It was cold that day.
It was freezing.
What was hotter? The day at the DoubleTree at the Kyoto Gardens or the day at the Hollywood Sign?
I would say Kyoto Gardens was hotter for me. It was that stymied, hot. It was the air was hot. The atmosphere was like there wasn't any wind. The Hollywood Sign was hot because of the sun was like right on us. But then as soon as the sun moved, it wasn't quite so bad.
Yeah, the clouds crossed it.
Yeah, Kyoto Gardens was definitely. I was melting. I was ready for a nap.
But that was a nice place.
It was
a nice place to do it. But see, the other thing I learned throughout doing all this is that one, like with anything, you have to sit there and you kind of have to be, not creative, but you have to kind of be flexible. Mm-hmm. Okay. You have to be flexible in certain things, and especially in unusual times. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of one of the hardest things to kind of overcome, is that flexibility. But then you also realize too that, okay, like you said, we didn't have the studio per se that we would normally be doing our show in, which was through most of the fall of 2019, but it allowed us to do other things. One of the things we wanted to do was take the show on the road, and ideas were like the Grammy Museum, which is still on the list, but we can't go there now. And there was some of those type of things around LA, some museums and places like that, but they were all closed. So then the idea was, okay, what can we do that's on the road, but isn't going to, require us to be in an enclosed environment. Mm-hmm. And that's when the Kyoto Gardens, that's when the Hollywood Sign, that's when the beach popped up, because there's nothing better, more refreshing and energizing than sitting at the beach until the seagulls and the kite skiers come and knock you out.
So funny.
But that was the thing. And so when you start to realize, it's like, okay, so some of the stuff that we did and we had to experience was not the best. And for a lot of people, 2020 might have been even worse off because maybe they lost a loved one or somebody got really sick. And so, we remember that. But it also provided opportunity to kind of rethink how we do things and to kind of get a perspective, kind of like, I don't want to say reset because that's being, overused. But yeah, it allowed you to sit there and be like, okay, we got a blank slate. What can we do And how can we do it? That's something unique and different. Mm-hmm. And otherwise we'd still be in the studio. We'd still be doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And yet now we're able to hopefully provide at least the people that watch the shows, on YouTube or IGTV or the TV stations that we're on, an opportunity to kind of see different things and kind of mix it up a little bit.
Right. So it's fun, and you had the idea to go around to the different iconic places, some of our outdoor, on tour, which I think was a great idea because listening to us on the podcast gives one experience, but then watching the video recording, you can see the Hollywood sign, you can see the iconic Santa Monica Pier, you can see the Kyoto Gardens, you can see, the El Chorrito. And so it gives a whole, or the beach, the one of the Long Beach episodes, the sun was setting and it was gorgeous. It was I stopped and took pictures right in the middle of the show because it was just absolutely gorgeous, the sun going down. So we do, we are experiencing these different iconic, SoCal locations, which I think is very, very cool. And had you still had that studio, we would have been in the studio every week and not out and about. So I really appreciate that we have, kind of gone with the current climate, the current culture that we're in. And we're just like, okay, how do we navigate, where we are? We don't have the studio anymore. So plan B has been amazing. Yeah.
It's actually been a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the point of learning from it is that oftentimes we want to do things a certain way and we think things should be done a certain way, like doing a show in the studio and all this and that. But then you realize that there's other chances that you're forced to take, because you have to. I mean, like you said, we could either shut down or we could find other modes by which to do things. Mm-hmm. And so, we started out, doing some stuff from your place. We do some stuff from my place. We do some stuff on the road. And then we start to realize that, okay, wait a minute. There's some things that we can do more so than we ever thought we could do.
Right.
If it wasn't for this.
Right.
And that's the thing that, you can appreciate. They always say look for the silver lining in the cloud. The silver lining for me, because most of, like I said, what I had going on this year was the show, cause I didn't have anything else. And it was to look at that and see how can we overcome the obstacles, the hurdles, the challenges that are thrown at us. Mm-hmm. And those are the type of things that you can learn in life no matter what.
Oh, right. I mean, this would be translated to so many different things.
Yeah. Just take away the pandemic and, what if you have these other challenges in life that happen? These other things going on in life. How can you overcome them? How can you, rise up to meet the challenges? What can you do to overcome the obstacles? We talk about that all the time. Mm-hmm. Take your passion, make it happen. Let yourself be great. Overcome the hurdles. I think one of our biggest shows was one of the first shows we did. It might even be episode 6. I get knocked down, but I get up again. Never going to keep me down.
Yeah.
I mean, on our SoundCloud account, that's still going today. I'm getting notifications of people listening to that even today. And it's one of the most listened to shows on our SoundCloud account. And it's like, that's the thing. Overcoming those obstacles, overcoming those hurdles and getting up and keep going is an important lesson to learn. And that's one of the things that we should have been able to learn this year is, we don't have the traditional graduations. We don't have the traditional wedding ceremonies. We don't have the traditional schools. We missed out on that and everything's changed and doesn't necessarily mean those changes are good, but we adapt and we realize that, okay, maybe there's some other things that we can do to put the focus more on, like we were talked about us, the people, than the ceremony. The people over the thing.
Right.
Which I think is important to remember. The people over whatever it is that we think. We get wrapped up too much in the ceremony of it all, and we forget the people behind it. And that's one thing we need to remember.
We do. And I think that's probably another area that we have grown during the year. So, we could talk about our successes and our failures, throughout the year. The successes were that we have adapted to the environment and we have stayed on course and we have not wavered and we have, moved forward regardless, of what was going on. That's a success in the structural part of it. And I think, and you've done an amazing job with the technology and the sound and the equipment and the filming and the editing. And, I was remarking earlier about the sound quality on location, at the beach or at the Hollywood sign or whatever. It sounds like we were in a studio, even though we were outside. And so we've have so many, successes, in that area. And I think the, some of the content, I think we have grown, over, the year as well, just tight, not only being mobile, but also, the conversations, gosh, I cringe. I still cannot bring myself to watch our very first.
Yeah, that was rough.
Podcast. Have you looked at it recently?
Yeah. In fact, I just, was going through some of them not too long ago, and the first one was pretty rough, but it goes back to kind of the thing of, hey, let's do this and let's just get it done, and we'll progress as we go.
Right. We just needed a starting point. And so I can't bring myself to do it. One of these days I will go back and I probably should do it sooner than later. Watch that very first episode, but it kind of makes me cringe. But
if you watch the progress between episode 1 and episode 2,
yeah,
then you see why it was necessary to have episode 1.
Yes. That's the good way to say it. Why it was necessary to have that episode 1. Yeah. I like the way that you put that.
We needed that to get to where we are now today.
Yes. And so if you have the stomach for being not so great in the beginning, then you have something to work with and to grow from and to learn from, and, and to move on. And so that also is I look at our content as a success on my side, success and maybe failure, but mostly success in the fact that we have come a long way from that first episode.
Well, I remember I was remembering the introduction to that first episode. Man, that was rough and raw.
Was it really?
Yeah, there was like nothing to it. It was just like, what are you doing?
Well, I think we even sat there and stared at each other for a minute a couple times. We had a couple different, and
we just sat there and we're like, okay,
how do we start? What do we do? What do we say?
but see that's the point that sometimes that, people, they don't know how to do something, but they want to. Mm-hmm. Well, just do it. That's kind of like my attitude. Yeah, just do it, because you don't know where it's going to go. I mean, I take a look at any TV show, for example, and the first episodes, the first season, it is what it is.
Seinfeld is a classic example. The pilot was really good. They played the pilot not too long ago, and I was pleasantly surprised. But the first season, oh my gosh, it's painstaking. Yeah. I don't know how it made it to the second season. The other seasons were phenomenal. And then you get into season 8 or 9 or something, and they are just hilarious. But it took a while for Kramer to become Kramer. Right. And it took a while for George to become, George is getting upset, because they're always yelling, towards the later, but that's what makes it better. They were getting into their groove. So every time I look at a season 1 Seinfeld, I'm like, okay, see, we're okay.
Yeah, we're okay. I don't know if it's Seinfeld or if it's something else, but there's another TV show, but it might have been Seinfeld, because I think you might have mentioned that before. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's a lot of shows that are like, wait a minute, what if season 1 got canceled? Mm-hmm.
We never would have had, the rest of it.
Maybe Friends. I don't know. I was watching, because I like to watch sometimes, especially this past year. There were a lot of things on TV because they needed content. Mm-hmm. It was behind the scenes, and they would do the show behind the scenes of these different shows. And there was a few of them that were like, they didn't really want to do a season 2 because they thought that it wasn't a good show, but they had no other content. Or there was a couple of shows that wanted to cut mid-season and not continue because the ratings were so bad, but they're like, we have nothing to replace them. And so we just got to suck it up. And then the second half, it's like, oh, wait a minute, there's a little bit of improvement. More traction. And then all of a sudden they take off.
Right.
Or, you think of any, music group out there, I think I was talking last episode about Spotify. Spotify puts out there, at least they did this year, what you listen to, like the most listened to groups, the most listened to songs. And one of the groups that came up, as one of the top groups that I'd frequent on my Spotify was Bon Jovi. And you think of a group like that, they were booed off the stage at one point, allegedly, when they first hit the stage. And then now they've gone on to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the dude's worth like $400 million, and all kinds of albums and success. So sometimes you get those humble beginnings, but if you stick to it,
I would say always humble beginnings.
Yeah, I think so too.
I would say always, because people seem as if to come out of nowhere, but there was a whole lot of preparation going on to get that spark,
to get to there. But if you stick to it and you don't give up, then chances are you're going to get there. I've seen so many people try and then they just give up because it takes a little bit of work, but they don't want to commit to that.
Or they're not getting enough immediate, they want the 10-year applause in the first month.
Right.
And like you're not going to get that 10-year applause until 10 years from now. And that's hard to stomach. That's hard to, I think that's one of the things that I've been struggling with this year that, is just being, settled. Like you mentioned, at the beginning, like, okay, 2020, what has it done? What has it brought? And yes, we have had these successes, as far as, building the show and learning how to be mobile and, not missing any time and being dedicated. We've had a lot of, successes for that. But I think that, part of what I like on the other side of it, the flip side, what I struggled with in 2020 is just being settled. Like I don't do well when I'm in the middle of a situation. I'm much better after the situation, looking at it in hindsight and reflecting and like, okay, now I can kind of see and now I can do, Monday morning quarterback. But when you're on the field and the other team is coming at you, it's like, I don't know where I am. I don't know where I'm supposed to stand. And I just felt so thrown off this entire year. So in my mind, I mean, if I would go back and listen to some of the shows, maybe it wouldn't be as bad as what I thought. But in my mind, some of the shows, what it felt like to me is that I just couldn't make heads or tails of what was going on. Like the whole racism stuff, that came out. It's like, okay, how do you make heads or tails out of, all of this, the, stuff that went on this year that, came out in public. And then, the pandemic and the mask and the not mask and the information in this. And how do you make heads or tails of that? And then you have the political, election with all of this, lying and manipulation. How do you make heads or tails of that? And then I know with my, Christian faith, I saw a lot of things and got into a lot of arguments with people things that I genuinely did not understand and do not understand. And when I started asking questions, I was like mobbed. And I feel more secure in my position today than I did, 3 months ago, but I'm still on that same track. There's just things like I just don't understand. And so, I was kind of like not a crisis in faith as far as like God is concerned, but a crisis in the people, crisis, like I'm very questioning, the church and what is going on with the church, what is going on in, both the Republican and the Democratic Party, what is going on socially with all of the, the racism and everything. And so for me to do a show in the middle of all of that, plus I was experiencing my own, depression and stuff going on that I always have going on. For me to come and to show up was a task, right? But then I'm not always good at articulating when I'm in the middle of something. And so it's hard for me. I feel like, I don't know if it's coming off that way, but just from my perspective, I feel inadequate. And so, it bothered me, I think sometimes doing the show, it bothered me because I felt like I wasn't prepared or I wasn't, on my game because like I just couldn't make sense of anything that's just going on, people losing jobs and people getting sick and people yelling at each other and people fighting all the time and, just making nasty comments to each other on social media. Like I was just so like thrown off and just couldn't make sense out of any of it that I didn't feel like an adequate co-host. So we were going through the motions of like doing the show, but then there were several times where I was like, what am I even contributing to the show right now? Because my brain is complete mush. I don't know where to stand. I don't know what to think. I don't know who to trust. And then to be like on a podcast or to be on a video and try to bring perspective when I don't even understand where the ball is, let alone what to do with it.
Right.
Like which way do you run? Like which way is my end? The end's at like, so yeah, that bothered me, I think has bothered me this year.
I pulled you through it. That's how great I am.
You did.
No.
Oh, wait. It's commercial. I have to pay my dues day. The great
Yes.
Son Edom.
Right. Which she came up with. She came up with that. The great
Every
Son
so
Edom.
many shows I have to pay my commercial dues. The great Son Edom, everyone.
No, but see, that's when you look back. That's going to be the interesting thing, because you think about it. We're going through, like you said, three things. You got the illness, the virus. Then we had great racial unrest. Mm-hmm. And then you had the election, which tore people apart. Mm-hmm. So you had kind of like the trifecta of things going on.
Right.
And then like for you.
And the economy.
Well, in the economy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was looking at something, and I didn't realize how bad the economy was, because like I said, I didn't have my job, so I had my 401k tucked away, and my financial advisor guy that I know, who for me, I don't have a whole lot of stuff, but what I do have, he does a good job. But then I just recently went and looked back over the history of it, and dude, we took a huge hit in a lot of things.
We did.
And it was like, damn, because he was just like, we gotta let it ride,
Right,
and so I just trust, so I didn't have to do the investigating and the watching and the worrying myself. I just let him do all that. And when I call him up, he's like, how bad is it? He goes, we just gotta let it ride. But it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people probably lost a lot more than I ever did, because of that, because they probably had more to lose. But when you think about all that stuff that we went through, and then this is probably going to be the curious thing, maybe a year or two down the road for you, is to go back and watch some of those, listen to some of those shows. And cause like you said, you're kind of growing through it and going through it, not only through yourself, but also, on a podcast for other people to watch,
exactly,
other people to view. You get a different perspective when you're watching
it
versus
feels cringe.
talking.
Yeah.
And it almost kind of reminds you of like those childhood actors that are growing up and maybe going through puberty and those ages while on TV, the awkwardness of it and trying to figure it out, But the thing about it is, as you continue to push yourself, I think when you come out the other end, you're that much more evolved, because not only did you figure out whatever you figured out through the crisis, through the voting, through the racial tension, through the economic downturn, but then you also fought your way through the process of the show. And now you come out the other end. And I think you get a lot further than if you would have just, like you said, closed up shop and been like, I don't want to do this anymore. Or, we took time off or whatever. It would have been a whole different perspective.
Yeah. And I think, cause we had talked several episodes ago about, there are certain things that we are perfectionistic about, and other things like we just don't really care. Right. And you had mentioned like the quality of the show and everything is a high one for you on your list, to get it right. For me, content is one of those areas. And if I feel like I'm not, delivering, I just won't go back and listen to the show. And so at the beginning, I was like, oh yeah, this is great. I listened to every show. I'm like, oh, this is, now that I have a little more skin in the game and I'm a little more humble and I'm a little more like, oh crap. Like now it just feels a little cringe to go back and listen to those, that would probably set my mind at ease, because maybe it's not as bad as what I'm thinking. But it feels so there's two sides of this. So one, it feels cringe to go back and look at growing in front of people. The other side of it is that you don't grow unless you can't grow in a podcast unless you're doing a podcast. There's just no other way around it. If you want to sing on stage and be good at it, you have to get on stage in front of a bunch of people and try some of the dance moves and try out the songs and see how they work. And then that's just the only way to do it. Right. So there's that aspect of it. But then there's also the other side of it where, for me personally, I am overboard wanting to be real. I want the people around me to be real. I want the people on TV to be real. I want the politicians to be real. I know tall order, because a lot of people are not real. We, deny and hide and blame and rationalize and, all kinds of crazy stuff. And then we're all confused. Right. So for me, like, I really, 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 really want to be real and just like put it out there so that I can have integrity in myself. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be what I want other people to be. So then my mind starts going. It's like, okay, well, what are my blind spots? Like, are people seeing blind spots in me because I'm being real, and real isn't always pretty.
Right.
Real is like chaotic sometimes and confusing sometimes. And, you just kind of like are what you are. And so I start second guessing, but I want that in other people. I want other people to be real, But then to be that, it's hard. And so I guess I struggle with that boundary line, because at the end of the day, that is who I want to be. I just want to be the person that like tells it like it is. What are the pros? What are the cons? What are my blind spots? Let me be honest, even though it's going to get me in trouble. Like, that's the kind of person that I want to be in, not only in my personal life, but in public. And I have always thought, like, yeah, I want to be the person on TV that like struggles and people watch me struggling along the way. Like, if I ever had a position, higher than this, that's what I would do. The flip side is that I'm sitting here second guessing everything that I've done, and I'm questioning, like, oh my gosh, I can't go back and watch because I didn't have that macro perspective when I'm on the street, and being on the street is kind of ugly, and oh my gosh, that show wasn't very good. So it's that battle within me. It's like the two sides of me, like wanting to do that. But then when I do it, it's like, oh man, that just doesn't look good. That didn't sound good.
But see, isn't that the whole point of self growth though, is reflection?
Yeah.
And so you sit there and you reflect.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, this is good. This is bad. We could improve on this. This is going good. We can adjust this, do that. And then that's how you sculpt your masterpiece, by creating this. And then hopefully people will like it. And then it catches on, and then off you go.
It is. But I think that in that we have this false sense that we still look good anyway.
Yeah.
And we forget that in the scenario that you just said, which is absolutely necessary, and I agree with 100%, it means that you're not going to look good.
Yeah.
For a while.
Yeah. No, it could take some time. It could take a while. I just assume everything's bad. And so then if I get good feedback, then I'm like, hey, we did something good. Otherwise, whatever. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah.
But it does take time. It does take growth, and especially the uniqueness of this year in having all that in addition to just doing what we do. Cause I remember when you would do your other things before we started doing the show, like you go back to early 2019 and you're posting some stuff up on, social media.
Yeah, I had weekly videos.
Yeah, you had weekly videos and things, and you would get the views and
3.
So forth. Okay, 3. You
get the 3. Polite. I'll just put it out there. I got like 3 views.
3. But see, that wasn't discouraging. You kept going. You kept doing it because you wanted to put it out there.
Right.
Because I've learned over the years that sometimes we like to appeal to the masses, and we want the masses to hear a message. But oftentimes it's that one person, that heard what you had to say at that particular moment that matters. I mean, you think back of that time. I remember, if you remember that TikTok guy who listened to what you had to say.
Yeah.
And then that one time, and then that one time, and he just happened to come across, something on a TikTok video, and he's like, oh yeah, I heard this thing about what she said, and it made me reflect on this, and that was through TikTok, and at that one particular moment in time, you had an impact on that guy, and I still see him floating around on TikTok every once in a while. But you had something at that time that he needed to hear, or how we never know, because we talked about this before, the silent minority, or the silent majority versus the vocal minority. And there'll be times where people might not truly understand what they're going through, but they can relate to what you were going through, what I was going through for the last year, and they'd be like, okay, at least I'm not the only one going through this.
Yeah.
At least there's other people out there.
Or the silent majority is hard, because if we don't, like the other day, we went to our therapist, and I was saying I don't know what we were talking about, and he says, oh, somehow I came across your Facebook post. And I laughed, and I'm like, oh shoot, which one? Because some of them have been kind of controversial.
Right.
And he says it was the one, which I guess the one that had, tons and tons of comments, and we were arguing back and forth. He says, no, it was really good. Really good. And he had this like look on his face. Had I not gone, I haven't seen him in a long time, but we had to go and talk to him about an issue. And had I not gone that day, like I never would have known, because he wouldn't have reached out. Well, he didn't reach out. He only told me because he saw me. And so it's so discouraging to not have like, on one hand, we want the validation that's like, gosh, am I making an impact, and are we are we on the right track? But then on the other hand, it's like, well, you don't get that until you've earned it. You don't get that audience until you've grown it and earned it. And so it's really hard in that middle to stay the course when the success that you want is not there yet. And it may not be there for 5 years or 10 years or 5 months or, whatever. And so that silent majority, it's great to say like, oh yeah, there's that silent majority, but then it's like, well, if you don't hear from, because they're silent, right?
Right.
And if we don't hear from them, we don't know that they're there. And then it's like, man, am I on the right track? Am I like, 3 people were watching my videos during the year. And then, our podcast, we do have a lot of watchers, but not, or listeners, and not as much as we would like. So it's like, oh man, 2 years now. It's like, okay, where am I making an impact anywhere? So it's hard.
Sometimes we may never know.
To persevere, it's hard to keep going. But I think you've touched on it several times. It's like in your heart, if you know that this is what you want to do, you just do it. Yep. You just keep doing it regardless.
You got to do it for yourself first.
Yeah.
If that's what you truly want. And then you can do it so hopefully, the message gets out there. And it could be anything. I know people that are doing podcasts and it's about nerdy stuff. That's what they actually call it, nerdy stuff. Whatever nerdy stuff is, I don't know. But it's nerdy stuff. And then there's other people that are talking about, makeup. A lot of people might think that doing something about makeup is, vainful or, what's the point, but it's important to some people. It's important to a lot of people, in fact. And so
they get millions of views.
Yeah. And so, it's probably one of the most watched type of things, even though if you sit back and look at it, people could say, or would criticize it as being, vanity, but it's important, fashion, is important. Athletics, I worked in sports talk radio for the longest time. Well, not for the longest time, but for a long time. And I would sit back and often think, okay, the stuff we talk about is really pointless. It doesn't matter who won the football game.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
Right.
But to some people, it does matter. It doesn't matter that, this team beat that team, but yet to some, it does matter. And that's important. Or one of the things I learned early on too was that, okay, when we watch a game, if our team loses, that's a part of us and we need to go through not necessarily the full stages of grief, but yeah, there's a downtime when you're like bummed and you have to embrace that. Oh, my team lost. I'm bummed because we have a vested interest in that. And so we have to go through some of those things, but as long as we are there, because I go back and I'll watch my favorite teams, like the Twins, even though they might lose, I'll go back and watch them, go back and watch them because that's, who I like to watch and they're a part of me. And so just like if you're doing a show, if you're doing music, how many people have put music out there and the music is flopped?
Right.
Then they get a one-hit wonder and then they go away, but they got that one-hit wonder.
Right.
Others put the music out there and it's successful. How many people put, great movies out there, these great producers, Clint Eastwood and the DreamWorks people. And, you look at, Francis Ford Coppola, and you look at some of these people, Steven Spielberg, and they've even had flops, or they put things out there that kind of wasn't very good in the beginning, and then they grew their craft and they improved and got better. So it does take time, but if you ask them, I think you'll find out that for the most part, A, they want to do it because they love it. They're doing it for themselves.
Right.
And then B, they're hoping to have an impact on somebody else, whether it be entertainment or whatever.
Right.
And
hoping to have impact on somebody else is not a selfish thing because, God has given us so many skills and so many talents and so many passions and so many dreams. And the reason we are given those is for the benefit of each other. We're blessed to bless again. Like whatever we have, it's not for the benefit of us. It's for the benefit to share and to, because we, how many times have you, heard a song and it just really overwhelms you. It's just like, wow, that is such a great song or a great movie, or you see, some piece of art or whatever it is, and you just get that feelings like, oh my gosh, that was fantastic. That is that person's skill and talent moving through and for everyone else's, enjoyment.
The other thing that's interesting is, I went to an art gallery recently. It was open, so I went in, get some culture, and it was down in Beverly Hills, and they had Salvatore Dali paintings. Okay, and there's so many layers to this, and it's funny because I'm sitting there and I'm giving my interpretation of what I think it is, right? I'm just sitting there. I don't know. I have no idea, but I'm sitting there and I'm interpreting it. And so we go through and we look at a couple pieces, 3 or 4, and we've interpreted what we've gotten from it, what we think what it is and what he's probably trying to express in his paintings. Okay. And then the curator comes over and he's like, so what do you guys think of this? And so I'm like, oh, yeah, that's pretty interesting. What does this mean? And it's something completely different. He comes up and tells us this whole different thing. And so I told him, he goes, what did you think it meant? And I said, well, I thought it meant this. And he goes, yeah, that's completely opposite of what it really means. I'm like, but how do you know? You just learned from a book.
Yeah.
Well, the point being is that we can interpret things. We may want it to be interpreted a certain way, but it might come across differently. Now, I didn't enjoy the piece less. In fact, I think my interpretation of it made me appreciate the art better than the curator's interpretation of it, because mine was more entertaining. And when you combine the two, then it makes sense. But I appreciated it for what I got out of it. How many times you sit there and you sing lyrics to a song and then you realize that they're the wrong lyrics, and you find out what the true lyrics are, and you're like, wait a minute, that song sucks. My version's better.
Yeah.
That type of thing. It's just enjoying the product, the creativity or whatever that people are putting out. But the point is that we might intend one thing, but someone else might take it to a whole new meaning or a whole different meaning. And that's okay if that's to them. That's what it means. Then more power to them, as long as they're enjoying the creative product. Enjoy it.
Yeah. My English, which is the whole point of using your talents and your skills, so that, not only are we fulfilled when we're, behaving the way we were created, but to bless for the enjoyment of other people and to bless other people. I mean, we're richer because of each other's talents. But my English professor said, years ago, one time, she said, you're going to write a story, but this story is not, stagnant. It's fluid. Even though it's on paper, and even though it's in black and white, and even though it's written down and it's published, the book is published and the words cannot be changed, even still, it's a fluid story, because once it releases your hands and it's printed and it's sitting on someone's coffee table that you have no idea, they're going to bring their life experiences and their history and their perspective and their opinions and worldviews. They're going to bring all of that to your story when they're reading it. And so it's going to be a different story. The words might be the same from book to book to book, but the experience is going to be different. And in their mind, they're going to hold a different story after reading it than somebody else who, and it's always interesting at a book club when there are multiple people discussing a story, because you have all these different perspectives and people's like, oh gosh, I didn't even see that. And there may be a group, a collective, oh yeah, this means that. But then there's also so many interpretations because we're bringing our own story to that story. And it becomes something new. That's the great thing about art, whether it's music or the written word or paintings or even food. Beer, you do the Sunday night brew. It's like we bring our own experiences and we kind of make it our own. And that's the beauty of it, is that art is fluid. Love is fluid. It's not just one thing.
The other thing too is how many times you listen to a song over and over and over again, or you watch a movie or a TV show, and you're always getting something out
different.
of it.
Yeah,
it's always something.
Yeah.
There's a reason why you go back and you watch it over and over, listen to it over and over. You experience it over and over, because it's not the same experience every time. It's something different. And life can be that way. We sit there and we go through life and we expect life to be a certain way. Someone said, I just wish life was normal. Well, what's normal?
Yeah.
And what is a normal life?
What does that mean anymore?
And so it's like life is what you make of it. And, even through dark times, through the good times, whatever, you got to make the most of it. So if we're going through a year like 2020, what did you do to make the most of it? Did you just exist? Or did you try to do something? Fortunately, some people still had jobs to go do, and they had to do it. Others, like teachers, had to adapt in their jobs, and some might like it, some might not. Some experience more challenges. Maybe if you're in special ed, you have more challenges than general ed. If you're older, maybe high school or college, maybe your experience is different because the student's different than maybe kindergarten, first and second grade. So we all have these different challenges, and we have to adapt. But how do we make the most of what's given to us? Just like in the good times. In the good times, are we going to sit back and just enjoy, or are we going to prepare or take the good times and do something with it? It's kind of like the market. In the down times, people are still making money when the market's bad. And when the market's good, people are prepared for the time when the market goes bad, because they know it's going to go bad.
Right.
So they're always preparing. And that's what you do. It's like, what are you going to make the most of, and how are you going to do with what you've got right now? And that's kind of, for me in 2020, what I look back on and see is like, we were given something, You want to call it lemonades? We made lemon. We made lemonades. If you want to call it, whatever, we did this. And for me, I find as I look back on 2020 that it was kind of refreshing. It was kind of like, I won't say exhilarating, but it was, because we took something and we created something and we did things that probably we wouldn't have been able to have done if life was good. And it became more exciting because we had the challenges and we rose to the challenge. And we found creative ways to do things that we wanted to do that we probably wouldn't have done if things were good.
Right. We planted a lot of seeds.
Yeah.
This year for growth.
And I think that's, and I enjoy that when I look back on it. I think, that's something that's accomplished. I look at what you've come through the whole thing. Cause there'll be times I'm sitting here and we're doing and you'll show up and we'll be doing a podcast and record day. And I'm like, oh, she showed up good. That's all I needed. I can take care of the rest. She just showed up. And then there's other times it's like, okay, she showed up. She's raring to go. I'm just going to sit back and I can go on cruise control because I know that, she's going to go. But that's the ebb and flow of the year, because it's like, but just showing up.
Yeah.
Was part of it. And then I know, okay, she's here. We got it. We got it made. Cause, whatever the case, you talk about going back and listening to things. We're listening to I think it was one of the episodes we did down at the Santa Monica Pier. I think it was reconciliation. I'm not sure, but you were freezing cold. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, should I keep talking? Cause is she too cold to talk? I don't know. Should I keep going? Is she like really freezing cold? Cause when you get cold, you sometimes have a hard time.
I know.
So I'm like, and so I'm like, okay, as long as she's just there, I'll just kind of play off of her and I'll just keep talking. Then when I think she wants to say something, I'll stop. And then when she's like chattering again, I'll jump in. But that was the thing. It's like, just overcoming even some of those things and being there.
My hand was literally frozen to the microphone.
Yeah, it was cold.
Like I couldn't ungrip my hand.
My ear, my left ear, because I had the wind coming off the water. It was like, I think I had icicles off of it.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. We were able to look back and think of all the accomplishments and the things that we were able to do because we kind of took proactive steps to take what was given to us. And to create something and to do something with it. And now going forward with anything in life that comes, what I've learned from 2020, just the experience of this show, I know I can take and handle other things. Now the outcome might not be as great, but I know I can handle other things because I have now the tools that I've learned from 2020 and this show and how to do it. I can incorporate into, and apply into other facets of life. Which, is huge.
Yeah. I think that is so important to set the foundation of what you want to do. I see so many people, I know you do as well, who want to do something and they just cannot bring themselves to pull the trigger because it's just not going to be right. It's not going to be good enough. It's not going to be, perfect. And it's very sad. It's very sad. So I think moving forward, I feel like we should have a glass to, cheers, but, for everything that we've accomplished. But I think moving forward, for me, I do feel, now at the end of the year, I do feel a little more, comfortable, I think, and a little more relaxed and because I'm way better in the macro than I am the micro. And I feel like I've gotten a lot of perspective this year on many different things. And so I can take that, and move into the new year with a better grip. Hopefully there won't be as many surprises in 21 as there were in 20. But, because we were all just thrown so far off of our game, I feel like, but now it's like, since everything has happened, I feel like I can take it and I have a kind of like a grasp on where we are and then I can build from there. So hopefully,
well, it's going to be exciting.
It'll be
and for anything in life, anytime you turn the corner to a new chapter, whether it's a new month, whether it's a new week, whether it's a new year, whatever it might be, it's always that turning the page that as you write in the chapters, in the book, when you get to that new chapter, you kind of get reinvigorated to read.
There's hope. Yeah.
You're going through the chapter and you're like, okay, when's this chapter going to end? Oh yeah, I'm at the new chapter. Now you're excited again to continue going because you've reached that new chapter.
Yeah.
And so we can use that, that enthusiasm and that excitement as we go to the next chapter of whatever that might be and anticipate the good, but prepare for the worst. But whatever it's handed to us, if we can just take it and use it for the best or take it and try to create something out of it instead of it dictating us, we can kind of control it. That makes sense. You know, it's kind of like the pottery on the potter's wheel. It could sit there and spin, and it can create its own thing just from the force of the, spinning.
The gravity, yeah.
But if the hands are there molding it, then you create that crappy pot that you first made. And then from there, you're creating better pots and bowls and things. And then you've got, over here, you've got this, decrepit little thing that you made. And then over here, you've got a masterpiece of, some kind of, cauldron that you're now casting spells on people with because, you gave it to the witch. No, but there's things you can do. And so that's the thing. So for me, that's what I'm looking forward to, is just seeing, as we move into the next year, the next chapter, whatever comes, I think we're prepared to address it. Maybe not the specifics of it, but we have the tools to address it, and then, make the most of it. And as we look back, I don't think for me personally, 2020 was as bad as it could have been. And I think that that's encouraging as we move into, the unknown of the next year.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot coming, but hopefully the jarring, hopefully it won't be so jarring. Hopefully we've kind of, all of that stuff erupted, and it erupted all at once, and which made it worse. Or it could have been perfect timing, for it all to happen at the same time. But I feel like now we have something to work with, and that's very hopeful, very exciting.
It's kind of like any contact sport, whether you're a boxer, whether you take martial arts, even football, you got to get used to getting hit.
Yes.
You got to get used to getting hit. You got to practice getting the hit.
That kickboxers actually hit like bamboo trees.
Oh, do they?
And to toughen up their shins so that when they get in the ring, it doesn't hurt so bad.
Yeah, I believe it. But that's the thing. We got to get used to taking those hits.
Yes.
And giving those hits.
Yes.
And condition our body so that we know and experience what that blow is like. Law enforcement oftentimes will have to suffer through getting tased or pepper sprayed because that way they can experience what it's like, so you can combat it, right?
Right.
So you're prepared to know what to expect. And that's what 2020, I think, has kind of done. We've taken that blow, and now we're kind of prepared, and we kind of know what to expect, and we can utilize and be better equipped now for things that are going to come in the future.
Hear, hear.
So hit your bamboo tree.
Let's hope that is all true.
Hey, we are Two Steps Ahead Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at TWO, Two Steps Ahead Podcast. Link in the bio. It's a link tree, so it'll bring up many options. You got the swag shop. You've got our YouTube channel, so you can watch all of our videos. And then there's platforms that you can listen to the audio version of our podcast, such as Spotify, Pandora, SoundCloud. If you go to SoundCloud, you can actually download and take the episode with you on the go. If you listen to RadioWarp.com on Mondays and Wednesdays at 11 a.m. and 8 p.m. Pacific time, we're on there. Plus, there's some cool music as well and some other things going on there. So check that out. You can download the app and take that with you too. And then also we can find you where? I
am on Instagram at Tara Hoke Shiro. TaraHokeschiro. There's a link in my bio for all of the, a lot of the same stuff, the swag shop, my blog, the podcast video library as well. And I'm also on Facebook.
And TaraShiro.com.
Yes.
You can go to our website and find out all that cool stuff there too. Hey, so take your passion, make it happen, let yourself be great, be kind, don't be an a-hole, and we are Two Steps Ahead Podcast.
Thanks, guys.